I'm Alex, and my life's like living in a mansion that feels more like a museum. Large, empty, and you can't touch anything. Ever been the invisible kid in your own home? Yeah, that's me every day. There I was, sprawled on the king-size bed that could fit an army, juggling a golden ball my dad got from some fancy auction. Priceless, they said. But to me, just another shiny thing in a room too big for its own good. The ball went up, came down, and my thoughts? They were doing somersaults. The door was slightly open, and the distant clinks and clatters from the kitchen hinted at another new nanny. They came and went like the seasons, each leaving behind a tale of a broken vase or a missed spot during cleaning. I rolled my eyes and made a mental note to at least learn her name before she'd vanished like the rest. "Mom?" I called out, my voice echoing down the hall as I wandered towards her office. "Can we hang out today? Maybe hit the park?" She didn't look up, just hummed an absent, Her fingers tap dancing on the keyboard. "Ask Mrs. Hargrove," she said, her gaze glued to a graph that was climbing like my hopes before they took a nosedive. "Dad?" I tried again, finding him in his usual spot, barricaded behind a fortress of newspapers in the living room. "My friends are going to the big basketball game. Can we go too?" He glanced over the top of his paper wall, his eyes briefly meeting mine before retreating. "Next month, Alex. Mrs. Hargrove can take you if you want," he said, his voice as distant as the concept of a family trip. "Which nanny?" I muttered, the sarcasm lost in the vastness of the room. "You guys switch them out faster than I can learn their names." I stood up, pacing around my room. "You know, if you want to stick around and see how this all plays out, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's gotta be more thrilling than watching me pace in circles, right?" Walking to school, I felt really down. At the school gates, some guy I didn't even know greeted me cheerfully. "Hi, Alex," he called out with a big smile. I barely recognized him. People knew me because of my dad's money, not because we were friends. It felt like I was famous for something that wasn't even about me. In class, I was the kid with the doodles on his notebook, the ones whose report card was a mix of C's and D's, and the occasional B in gym. I could feel the teacher's eyes on me, heavy with unspoken words. They never said anything though. How could they when my parents' money spoke louder than my grades? Lunchtime was a whole other game. I sat with my so-called friends, the ones who turned into bullies at the drop of a hat. Like that day when they tripped Tommy from the next table, making him spill his drink everywhere. Laughter erupted around me, and I saw Tommy's face go red with embarrassment and frustration. I wanted to help, but I was frozen, a statue among jesters. It was moments like these that made me question the company I kept.
"Alex, aren't you gonna laugh?"
One of my friends nudged me, his grin wide and cruel. I shook my head, pushing my tray away. "Not funny, guys," I mumbled, but my voice was a whisper lost in their jeering. After school, I'd hit the field, the one place where I felt like I could breathe. I was the striker, the one who could run with the wind and score goals that made the crowd roar. But at home, my trophies were just another decoration. "Focus on your future, Alex. Sports are a distraction," Dad would say, his eyes never leaving his business reports. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps, to inherit his empire. But all I wanted was to chase a ball on a field, feeling alive. The last straw came on a rainy Thursday evening. I had brought home a stray dog, shivering and scared, hoping to find it a shelter. But my parents were furious. "We don't need more mess in this house," they shouted. I argued, pleaded, but it was no use. They made me take the dog back out into the rain. That night, something in me snapped. I couldn't stand the coldness, the indifference anymore. "I hate you!" I screamed, my voice echoing through the empty halls. I grabbed a backpack, stuffed it with a few clothes, and left. They didn't chase after me. They never did. The heavy door closed behind me with a thud, and I stepped into the night, not knowing where I was going, but certain I couldn't stay. That's when I saw it, an old pickup truck rumbling along, the bed empty and inviting. Without thinking, I jumped into the back, pulling an old tarp over myself. As the truck drove away, I felt every jolt of the road, each one taking me further from the life I knew. Under that tarp, I made a silent vow. I'd start over, be someone new, someone real. And as the truck carried me into the unknown, I felt a twisted sense of freedom. For the first time in a long time, I was making a choice all on my own. The truck finally halted, and I heard the driver's door creak open and slam shut. Heart pounding, I stayed still under the tarp. The back of the truck opened, and I felt the tarp lift. Squinting against the sudden light, I saw a man peering down at me, concern etched on his face. I held my breath and let my body go limp, feigning unconsciousness. He gently shook my shoulder.
Hey, kid, are you alright?
His voice was rough but kind. I let out a slow breath and fluttered my eyes open, as if coming to. Where am I? I croaked, pretending to be disoriented. The man offered me a bottle of water, which I took with a shaky hand.
You're safe,
he assured me.
But how did you end up in the back of my truck?
I gulped down the water and crafted a story on the spot. I don't know. Someone was chasing me and I ran. I can't remember anything else. Not even my name. The man, whose name I learned was Mr. Thompson, didn't question me further. He just nodded and said,
Alright, let's get you home and figure this out.
When Mr. Thompson brought me to his house, everyone there looked really worried. He told them how he found me, and they all seemed concerned. All except for Em. She was around my age and had this look in her eyes, like she didn't believe a word I was saying.
So, you don't remember anything? Not even your name?
Em asked, crossing her arms. I shook my head, trying to look as pitiful as possible. Nothing. It's all a blur. She eyed my designer clothes, a silent question in her gaze.
And they didn't take your fancy jacket or watch?
Odd robbers. I felt a rush of panic, but stuck to my story. I guess I just got lucky. The Thompsons huddled together, whispering urgently about what to do with me. Em's dad finally pulled out his phone and made a call.
Hey, Mike, it's Tom. I need a favor,
he murmured into the receiver. I could only catch bits and pieces of the conversation, but it was clear he was talking to a doctor. After a few minutes, he hung up and turned to the family.
Mike says it's likely shock or trauma. He suggested we give it a week before we involve the police. Memory issues like this can resolve quickly sometimes.
Em raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced, but her mom put a hand on her shoulder.
We'll keep an eye on him, and if anything seems off, we'll take the next steps.
I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. This small, cozy house was a stark contrast to the vast, cold mansion I called home. As the days went by, I got swept up in the simple, warm rhythm of their daily life. The lie I was living started to feel less like a deception and more like a dream I wished was true. Days turned into weeks, and I started to see the threads that wove the Thompsons tightly together. Em worked long hours at the local supermarket, her smile never fading, even as she juggled school and work. Her little brother Sam would often wait for her to come home, his homework spread out on the kitchen table, ready for her to help. One evening, I watched as Em's car refused to start. Without a second thought, her dad handed her the keys to his own truck, ready to take the bus to his night shift.
You need it more than I do, kiddo,
he said with a gentle smile. Another time, Sam fell off his bike, scraping his knee pretty badly. The way they all rallied around him, with Em dashing to get the first aid kit and her mom soothing him with soft words, made something ache inside me, a longing for this kind of unconditional support. It was during moments like these that I realized what I'd been missing in my own life. Despite all the money and luxury, my parents had always pushed me away. away, like an unwanted piece of furniture in their perfectly curated lives. In contrast, the Thompsons, with their modest means, pulled each other closer, their bond unbreakable. Their home was filled with laughter, arguments, and apologies, a real family dynamic that I had never experienced. The more time I spent with them, the more I understood the true value of family, something that couldn't be bought or displayed like a trophy on a shelf. But our simple life shattered the day 2 detectives showed up. They barged in, flashing badges and grabbing M's dad with rough hands. "We've got orders," one grunted as M's dad was dragged away, his eyes meeting mine with a silent plea. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. "What's going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking. One detective, without looking back, threw over his shoulder, "If you want him safe, go back to your parents." The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. My disappearance had consequences I hadn't considered. I couldn't let this family suffer because of me. I returned to my parents' mansion, the gates opening as if they were swallowing me back into a life I no longer wanted. My parents were waiting, their faces a mix of relief and anger. "We were worried sick," my mom said, her voice trembling. "You have no idea what you put us through," my dad added, his tone harsh. I stood my ground. "Why did you have M's dad arrested? What did he do?" My dad's eyes were cold. "We're pressing kidnapping charges. He took you in, didn't he?" I was stunned. "But I went there on my own. He didn't kidnap me." "It doesn't matter. You're a minor, Alex. He should have reported you. He's responsible." I felt a surge of anger. "I'll leave everything if you drop the charges. I care about them too much." My parents exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice less harsh. "We didn't realize how unhappy you were. We thought we were giving you everything." "Everything but what I needed most," I replied, my voice steady. There was a long silence. Then my mom spoke up. "We'll drop the charges, but we need to talk, Alex. Really talk." In the end, they understood. They let M's father go, and the charges were dropped. As for M and me, we grew closer through the ordeal. We started seeing each other, not as the rich kid and the supermarket girl, but as two people who had found something real in the chaos of life.